It is Wednesday, March 18th, 2026. So the other day, I focused a bit on universal health care as a policy purity test when deciding who to support in elections. Policy is important. What people say they're going to support is one of the best indicators as to what they'll actually support. The other big things that decide how people, and especially politicians, will act are money and human nature. When deciding whether or not someone is worth voting for, you want to know who is paying them and how much. Campaign finance in the US is not in a healthy place. Ever since the 2010 Citizens United versus Federal Elections Commission court case allowed corporations, unions, and nonprofit organizations to spend money on elections, we've seen a landscape where money floods into the pockets and largely funds the election campaigns of nearly every elected US politician. My dad liked to say that the world follows the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. And PACs, or political action committees, groups that are created in order to flood certain politicians with money, get to set many rules on how politicians act when they essentially purchase their elections for them through ad and other campaigns. I'm starting to get flooded with text message from said political campaigns, not necessarily from PACs. In fact, most of these are local, given that people are able to get my contact information from the delegate list for the DFL here in Senate District 46 in Minnesota. So delegates were assigned at the caucus last month, and I volunteered to be one of them. And we are the population representing our Senate district who get to vote on both policy and representatives in a primary election this weekend at the DFL district convention. Now, I did not get to vote on if we went to war in Iran. I would have voted no. I'm pretty much against any war, and especially that one. We can already see the impacts from the lockdown at the Strait of Hormuz, spiking oil and gas prices, which I expect will remain high for the foreseeable future. Perhaps more worrying, though, is something that I think any American over the age of 30 can very clearly remember, is a renewed threat of terrorism here in the United States. So for those who are watching who are over 30, where were you on September 11th, 2001? I was in 9th grade band class in the morning that day, and I remember practice stopped when we heard over the school-wide intercom an announcement that a plane had crashed into the World Trade Center in New York City. In the next period, I remember sitting in the hallway outside of the gymnasium watching news live on CRTs mounted high in the hallway as the second plane hit the second tower. One tower fell, and then the other. It was nearly 25 years ago, but I still remember details of that day more vividly than perhaps any other day in my childhood. Back then, I couldn't understand why the US was being targeted, but today, in an age where it's much easier to get a diverse array of perspectives and information sources, I think I have a comparatively better understanding. One unique and rather dark perspective I have on that day is that event ensured that my father's career in the defense contracting industry would flourish for the next 2 decades. Most of my childhood was indirectly funded by the inane amount of money that the US spends on defense, which has only grown and grown since then. One thing that's been in the news recently have been deplorable bets on an app called Polymarket, which is an application that allows you to bet on basically anything. Notably, some people got really rich betting on a US invasion of Iran by the start of March. The concept of war profiteering has been around a lot longer than that, of course, and with any established industry, it has deep roots that aren't always easy to spot. Many defense companies are openly traded on the stock market. Think General Dynamics, Honeywell, Boeing, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, just to name a few. And making money off a war is as simple today as targeted investing and suppressing your conscience. There was a high-profile departure from the US federal administration yesterday. Joe Kent, who was an ardent Trump supporter, resigned from his position as the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, which is one rung below the director of national intelligence. And he cited opposition to the war in Iran, and he pretty squarely blamed Israel for pulling the United States into it. Now, I don't have all the facts, and frankly, I don't think we can put all of the blame for the US going to war with Iran on Israel. Israel, to my knowledge, doesn't have access to the Tomahawk missile that was used to bomb an elementary school, killing about 170 young girls. But Israel is almost certainly a part of it. So back to this weekend's political convention, the biggest election that we're considering is who will be running for the DFL in the upcoming Senate election. The DFL primary race is between Angie Craig, currently an elected representative in the U.S. House, and running against her in the DFL primary for that Senate seat is current Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. I will 100% be supporting Peggy Flanagan. Peggy's vowed to take no PAC money, whereas Angie takes money from Israel via AIPAC and many other donors. In 2019, Ilhan Omar, then my elected U.S. House rep, made comments questioning the U.S. and specifically Congress's fervent and irrational support for Israel, which made national news. The entire Democratic establishment and most Republicans basically lost their shit, crafting and voting performatively on a resolution to condemn anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in response. To me, that outsized response is what was the most telling that something was kind of weird when it came to U.S.-Israel relations. And since then, I've supported Ilhan, and I'm going to continue to do so. I've also been keeping a keen eye on whether and how much each elected representative's campaign funding has come from international organizations or PACs. Not taking any money from PACs, as Peggy Flanagan has vowed to do, is one of the most green flags a potential politician can fly.